Rushed to nearby hospitals as the fire spread and an entire section of the building collapsed, trapping many more inside.
Arlington search and rescue personnel are just now, and it's about almost 2 o'clock, just now gaining access to portions of the building where the plane hit because the fires were too intense.
One ray of hope. The Pentagon is undergoing a major renovation and some of the offices in the path of the plane were vacant.
We're trying to find out who made it out okay and account for the people that may not have made it out.
When the plane hit, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld dashed from his office on the other side of the building.
And proceeded down towards the impact point in the building. It actually went outside the building and was helpful in getting several people that were injured onto stretchers, and then came back into the building and was in the National Military Command Center.
With smoke hanging in the air of the command center, Rumsfeld ordered aircraft carriers, amphibious ships, cruisers, and destroyers to New York and Washington, where they can serve as floating hospitals, help with the cleanup, and provide air defense against the possibility of more attacks. Rescue efforts are a long way from over, but the FBI is already combing the debris for clues to who was behind this.
The Pentagon has put all its bases on the highest state of alert, and the State Department has done the same thing with American embassies around the world. The early suspicion is that Osama bin Laden was behind this, and U.S. officials say eventually there will be military retaliation. Dan?
David Martin reporting live from the Pentagon. President Bush is just reported to have landed at Andrews Air Force Base just outside of Washington. He is said to be going to the White House itself. From there, he will address the American people tonight. We will see and hear it, of course, live on CBS News. As regards the explosions in Kabul, Afghanistan, a senior Pentagon official now says, and I quote him, "That is not a U.S. strike." Repeat, not a U.S. strike. This despite reports from the scene by at least one reporter on the scene who said that it was a missile strike. A senior Pentagon official says that it's simply not true. It wasn't a U.S. strike. Now, to punish those behind today's attacks, the United States and its people must first determine who they are. We are a country that believes in facts and the pursuit of facts. The facts are few about who's responsible for this. There has been much speculation, italicize, underscore the word speculation about that today, with Osama bin Laden, the renegade Saudi millionaire, frequently mentioned. No one knows who did this. CBS's Jim Stewart in Washington is following the investigation, checking his sources, and has this live report. Jim?
Dan, apparently we have a little bit more now than just speculation. U.S. intelligence officials and law enforcement no longer have just a theory about today's unprecedented attack. They now have some evidence, and it all points to Osama bin Laden. Sources tell CBS News that hours after the attack, intelligence agents detected what one official is calling significant indicators that the suicide planes were hijacked by members of Al-Qaeda, the terrorist group that reports to bin Laden. Sources describe the intelligence as communications intercepts, but would not provide any details. It's not definitive, said one official, but it is persuasive. Sensing that bin Laden would quickly become a suspect, Afghanistan's ruling Taliban party, which has been giving him safe refuge, called a press conference. We do not allow Osama bin Laden to operate from our land, the Taliban said, warning the U.S. not to take any, quote, speedy actions to retaliate. Meanwhile, law enforcement sources said there had been no credible claims for the joint attacks, and that intelligence had picked up no specific threats aimed at targets inside the United States before the attacks took place. Within minutes of today's attacks, officials were pointing to the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center by a group with ties to bin Laden, citing it as proof that bin Laden has never given up on his dream to destroy the symbol of America's economic power. And in recent months, analysts say bin Laden has only become more and more sophisticated in his attempts to strike at the United States. They point specifically to his simultaneous attack on 2 U.S. embassies in East Africa.
They also went directly against a U.S. destroyer, which was heavily guarded, and they did put a hole in that ship, the USS Cole. So they have a track record of conducting attacks that one would think they might not be capable of.
Late today, the U.S. intelligence community was rapidly sorting through a priority list of potential suspects within the U.S. for electronic eavesdropping, with sources saying the number may reach into the hundreds. There is also specific physical evidence that investigators are eager to examine. First are the transcripts of communications between the suicide aircraft and ground controllers, and second are cockpit tape recordings of conversations in the doomed aircraft themselves. The working theory is that the hijackers were pilots themselves and forcefully took over the controls to dive the jets straight into their targets. Dan?
Jim Stewart, good work with getting that new information about increasing evidence, real hard evidence, nothing conclusive yet, that bin Laden is tied to this. But do U.S. intelligence officials know where bin Laden is? Still in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Baluchistan? Do they have any idea?
As recently as the beginning of the week, they had reason to believe that he was hanging out in the two locations that he has most frequently been at in Afghanistan, and that's the cities of Jalalabad and Kandahar. Now, he travels frequently, Dan, and he does so by SUV and caravans with sometimes as many as 100 guards. It's a safe bet that he is on the move again tonight.
United States Secretary of Defense, thank you, Jim Stewart. U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld has begun a briefing at the Pentagon. We pick it up in progress live.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the Secretary just said, today we have watched the tragedy of an outrageous act of barbaric terrorism carried out by fanatics against both civilians and military people. Acts that have killed and maimed many innocent and decent citizens of our country. I extend my condolences to the entire Department of Defense families, military and civilian, and to the families of all those throughout our nation who lost loved ones. I think this is indeed a reminder of the tragedy and the tragic dangers that we face day in and day out, both here at home as well as abroad. I would tell you up front, I have no intentions of discussing today what comes next, but make no mistake about it, your armed forces are ready.
Chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Carl Levin.
Our intense focus on recovery and helping the injured and the families of those who were killed is matched only by our determination to prevent more attacks and matched only by our unity to track down, root out, and relentlessly pursue terrorists, states that support them, and harbor them. They are the common enemy of the civilized world. Our institutions are strong, and our unity is palpable.
Senator John Warner.
Thank you. As a past chairman preceding Carl Levin, I can assure you that the Congress stands behind our president, and the president speaks with one voice for this entire nation. This is indeed the most tragic hour in America's history, and yet I think it can be its finest hour, as our president and those with him, most notably our Secretary of Defense, our chairman, and the men and women of the armed forces all over this world stand ready not only to defend this nation and our allies against further attack, but to take such actions as are directed in the future in retaliation for this terrorist act. A series of terrorist acts unprecedented in world history. We call upon the entire world to step up and help, because terrorism is a common enemy to all, and we're in this together. The United States has borne the brunt, but who can be next? Step forward and let us hold accountable and punish those that have perpetrated this attack. Again, I commend the Secretary, the Chairman, and how proud we are. We spoke with our President here moments ago. He's got a firm grip on this situation, and the Secretary and the General have a firm grip on our armed forces and in communication of the world over.
Thank you very much. We'll take a few questions and then we'll adjourn. Charlie.
Mr. Secretary, did you have any inkling at all, in any way, that something of this nature and something of this scope might be planned?
Charlie, we don't discuss intelligence matters.
I see. And how would you respond if you find out who did this?
Obviously the President of the United States has spoken on that subject, and those are issues that he will address in good time.
Mr.
Yes.
Secretary, we are getting reports from CNN and others that there are bombs exploding in Kabul, Afghanistan. Are we at the moment striking back, and if so, is the target Osama bin Laden and his organization?
I've seen those reports. They, in no way is the United States government connected to those explosions.
What about Osama bin Laden? Do you suspect him as the prime suspect in this?
It's not the time for discussions like that.
Mr. Secretary.
A show of bipartisan support and solidarity at the Pentagon with Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld orchestrating this bipartisan appearance by members of Congress and General Hugh Shelton, the chairman of the Military Joint Chiefs of Staff in Washington. That'll go on for a bit, but the Secretary of Defense, never noted for talking a lot on this crisis circumstances, making clear he wasn't going to say a lot about what's going on. President Bush condemned the terrorist attacks. He vowed to bring those responsible to justice when it is determined who did it. The president is now back in Washington, headed at last report before the White House itself. He intends to address the nation from Washington this evening. We expect that at 9 o'clock Eastern time. That'd be 8 Central, and of course 6 p.m. On the West Coast. CBS News Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts has the latest. John?
Dan, even as the president makes his way back to the White House, the administration is still trying to come to grips with the scope of this tragedy. Secret Service sources tell CBS News that this indeed was just like Pearl Harbor. There was nothing on their threat assessment, no warning that this was coming.
The president was in Florida when word of the attacks first broke. Reading with a group of elementary students, Mr. Bush was stopped cold when his chief of staff delivered the news.
Move everybody across the street!
Moments later, in Washington, an urgent call to evacuate the White House.
I'm told the plane went near the Pentagon and they're chasing us off the grounds here.
It was an extraordinary scene as staff and the press corps were rushed from the grounds. If the Pentagon had been targeted, the Secret Service feared the president's home could be next.
Get everybody back! Everybody back!
Fire trucks took up positions on Pennsylvania Avenue, while SWAT teams stood vigil from the roof. Police sealed off a 2-block area around the White House. The only ones left inside the mansion, the vice president and his national security team, coordinating a response to the crisis from the Situation Room. With a continuing threat in Washington, the Secret Service would not allow the president to return and had him fly immediately to the security of Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward.
The full scope of the tragedy now apparent, Mr. Bush addressed the nation and vowed these acts of terrorism will not stand.
Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts.
From Barksdale, the president headed for Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, home of the Strategic Air Command, where he conferred with his national security staff about how to proceed. Confident that the White House had been secured, he then headed back for Washington, determined to send a signal to the world that America would stand strong in the face of these horrible acts.
And Dan, some more tough talk tonight from the president ahead of his address to the nation. A report just filed from aboard Air Force One. His spokesman, quoting the president, is saying, "We will find these people and they will suffer the consequences of taking on this nation. We will do what it takes. No one is going to diminish the spirit of this nation." Dan?
John Roberts in Washington Live. John, what's the security situation at the White House at this moment?
Well, Dan, the White House is still locked down. We are not allowed back in. There is a small crew that's been allowed back in to tape the president live tonight at 9 o'clock. You can see the helicopters are just starting to arrive on the south lawn of the White House. Dan, as a security precaution, Air Force One, which is always shadowed by fighter jets wherever it travels, was more than shadowed today on its way back from Nebraska. There was an F-15 positioned on each wing, and even now, Dan, every once in a while we hear a fighter jet flying combat air patrol, if you will, over Washington, D.C., something this nation never thought they would see happen. Again, the president just now arriving back at the White House. We'll hear from him later on tonight.
At 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Thanks, John Roberts. One of the few things that seems certain tonight is that these hijackings and attacks were meticulously planned and carried out with great precision. It also took a lot of money to do it. All of that is strongly supported by hard facts now at hand. CBS News correspondent Bob Orr, who covers aviation for us, has pieced it together. Bob?
Well, Dan, there's no doubt at all it was a highly coordinated attack, launched with simultaneous breaches of security at 3 of the nation's busiest airports this morning. Under the cover of the hectic morning rush hour when airports are particularly vulnerable, hijackers boarded 4 large passenger jets, 2 each from American Airlines and United Airlines, 2 of the strongest symbols of U.S. aviation.
American Flight 11, a Boeing 767, took off first at 7:45 this morning from Boston bound for Los Angeles. 13 minutes later, another 767, United Flight 175, also left Boston for L.A. At virtually the same moment, United Flight 93, a 757, took off from Newark for San Francisco. And to the south at Washington's Dulles Airport, another 757, American Flight 77, flew off towards Los Angeles. The first sign that anything was wrong was noticed by air traffic controllers, who watched the jets stray from their planned routes. This computerized radar path shows how the first plane, American Airlines Flight 11, climbed out of Boston and, as expected, headed northwest across Massachusetts. But watch what happened. As the plane entered eastern New York, it turned sharply to the south and headed straight for Manhattan. The 767 hit the World Trade Center at 8:48 this morning. And 16 minutes later, United Flight 175 delivered the second blow. The jets, fueled for cross-country flights, were filled with tens of thousands of gallons of volatile fuel. They were literally flying bombs, each with an explosive power far greater than the blast that leveled the Oklahoma City Federal Building. Based on radio communications from the planes, FAA authorities knew they were dealing with a terrorist attack and immediately moved to close New York and Washington airports. And for the first time in U.S. history, all flights across the country were grounded.
The airport's being evacuated, they need to go home.
But there were still 2 hijacked jets in the air, and one of them, American Airlines Flight 77, took aim on the Pentagon. It crashed in a fireball at 9:38. Meanwhile, the 4th plane, the flight from Newark to San Francisco, was heading west, and it traveled all the way to northeastern Ohio. The controllers monitoring radar watched as the jet then did a U-turn and headed back towards the East Coast. At 10:20, 2.5 hours after the 4-pronged attack was launched, the plane crashed in a rural Pennsylvania field.
I happened to hear the plane come through. It sounded like it was running moon. When it come down over top of me, I seen it go nosedive straight into the ground down here.
285 people died aboard the airliners today, and tonight the FAA is at a loss to explain how the security failures happened this morning. Now, you should know that numerous investigations have revealed gaping holes in this nation's aviation security system. But an important point to remember, and as I continue here, you see the President arriving in Marine One on the south lawn of the White House. It's important to remember that these were suicide attacks this morning, long acknowledged worldwide as the very hardest to stop. There is no piece of equipment, no scanner, no screener that absolutely can stop a terrorist who is willing to die. Dan?
Bob Orr live in Washington, just as you see a live photograph of President Bush stepping off Marine One, the helicopter that brought him from Andrews Air Force Base, where Air Force One took him a few moments ago. A salute to the Marine Guard, and a naturally somber-faced president strides in past the beautiful Rose Garden into the White House and into the Oval Office. The president will be addressing the nation tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. That'll be 8 Central, 6 on the far west coast. President Bush has spoken twice today. On both occasions, among other things, he asked for prayers for the families of victims of today's terrorist attacks. Now, Bob Orr, as we have only a few, well, actually about a minute left in this particular section, but our CBS News coverage will continue, of course. There was this report from Barbara Olson, the wife of the U.S. Solicitor General, who by telephone from the hijacked plane that eventually hit the Pentagon described some of the hijackers as having knife-like equipment. What's that all about?
Well, Dan, I think it could be critical in understanding how the security was breached. Remember, at airport checkpoints, there are 2 main pieces of equipment. There are X-ray machines. They are designed exclusively to look for the shape of a gun. That's the weapon that aviation experts fear. Also, there are magnetometers, metal detectors, and they are designed to pick up any metal, also a gun. But imagine for a moment, you heard apparently that Barbara Olson radioed they were using knife-like devices. What if these were made of some other hard material, some kind of plastic, What if they were disguised as fountain pens, or secured somewhere on the body of the person, or within a briefcase? They would not automatically set off the kind of alarm bells that a gun would set off. And in order for these attacks to have been promulgated simultaneously, it might go a long way to explain how they were able to breach the system 3 different places at once. Dan?
Bob Orr in Washington. Now you're watching continuing CBS News coverage of the attack on America. Back now with our special CBS Evening News live coverage of the attack on America from CBS News World Headquarters in New York. It began just before 9 a.m. in New York City rush hour. First, one of the twin towers of the 110-story World Trade Center was hit by a hijacked jetliner. Then the other suffered the same fate. A huge fireball blew all the way through the South Tower. You may want to watch here as the second plane hits. Minutes later, near Washington, a similar attack, a hijacked airliner attack on the Pentagon. A third jetliner crashed near the U.S. military headquarters, setting it aflame. And then in western Pennsylvania, not far from the presidential retreat at Camp David, Maryland, but in southwestern Pennsylvania, a 4th hijacked jet went down. Back in New York City, the unimaginable. After burning for more than an hour, the Trade Center towers collapsed. First one, and then the other. Thousands of concrete and steel thundered down in an avalanche on other buildings and into the streets, where firefighters and police were working frantically to help the countless victims. Some of the early victims of this were rescue workers. And then, after fire had raged inside for hours and smoke bellowed through side streets and along the great avenues, yet another major building in the trade complex fell. And tonight, Lower Manhattan, the financial center of the world, lies in ruins. In the nation's capital, a state of emergency and an emergency plan now in effect to keep the federal government running in an orderly way. Congressional leaders were taken to secure locations. The U.S. Capitol complex was evacuated and closed. CBS's Bob Schieffer was among the evacuees. Bob?
Well, Dan, this is something that Washington took very hard, maybe as
NBC's Pat Dawson has been on the streets of New York, very near the World Trade Center throughout most of the day. He's been witness to the heroic rescue efforts that were effected there today. And of course tonight, Pat, still an unknown number of dead trapped there in the rubble.
We've heard this issue through fatwas. We've seen that defense is ratcheted up worldwide every time he's issued a statement. He's hit the USS Cole, he's hit our embassy.
All right, clearly we have a breakup of our video signal there from Nick Robertson in Kabul, Afghanistan. What you're seeing, though, as the video phone, late technology that allows us to see these nighttime pictures here is not nearly as clear as a regular television monitor would provide, but we can see the images of a quieter capital city of Kabul, and Nick Robertson's audio clearly has dropped off at this point. We hope to reestablish the signal again. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning in Afghanistan, but back in New York it's just about 7 o'clock, and again we're about 10 hours removed from what has been a day that will live for a long time in the memories of a lot of Americans who have watched the images throughout the day. Back to New York City, the island of Manhattan, and CNN's Paula Zahn. Paula.
Thank you so much, Bill. And as you just said, even though we're 10 hours out, you can see behind me the remnants of the fire still coming from hijacked jet.
And then here you go again. What were the thoughts going through your mind?
Heidi, my thoughts were similar to what happened in 93, was that occurred, and
to those who have planned and committed these horrific acts, that America is strong, America is principled, America is united.
And Dan, that Washington of yesterday, which was the scene of all that partisan fighting, all that was long ago and far away. This is a different city tonight, a city that is slowly realizing this nation is at war.
Bob Schieffer in Washington. This nation at war, a war of terrorism, a war fought in the shadows and then with bursts into the open as was the case today. Joining us now from our CBS News Washington Bureau is the former Secretary of State for the United States of America, Madeleine Albright. Madam Secretary, thanks for being with us. How surprised are you about this attack today?
Well, we're all appalled, and as I watch all these pictures, Dan, we've all seen them all day long, and they are surreal. And watching the buildings come down and the attacks on Washington has been the nightmare scenario that people have feared for so long. I have to say, Dan, I ache for America tonight. We are a strong country, and I have faith that we will overcome this, but this is a huge challenge, and America must rise to the challenge.
Did you ever anticipate an attack of this scope?
We always, people talk about horrendous scenarios, but I don't think anybody has ever contemplated all the various pieces of this. As you have said, it is a highly sophisticated operation.
Who do you think was behind it?
I'm not going to speculate on that. You've been very careful in the coverage that I've seen, and I know that there are some reports that you are presenting, or your people, that it's Osama bin Laden. I think it's very important for us to get all the facts straight and investigate it and be sure. And I think calmness has to prevail, despite the fact that this is a highly emotional time for all of us, especially for the families of the victims.
And when it comes time to retaliate, when we have the facts, how will the United States retaliate?
Well, I think, again, we have the strongest military in the world with the finest servicemen and women. We have said in the past that we would retaliate at a time and place of our own choosing. I have complete faith in the military of the United States and in the leadership of America, and we all stand united. This is the ultimate evil.
This is Ernie Anastas reporting to you. We just want to bring you up to date now that all buildings south of Canal Street have been evacuated. Repeating, all buildings south of Canal Street have been evacuated. This is strictly as a precaution now. Police want to assess the damage in the area. It is strictly a precautionary measure. There is certainly much more to tell you about today. Lots going on. CBS 2 has reporters on the scene. We are at hospitals. We are with the mayor. We'll have a special report for you coming up tonight at 7:30. Right now, we invite you to stay tuned for more of a special edition of the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. We'll be back joining you again at 7:30.
Human rights, can a statement like that be made? Because the United States has stood tall, has tried to deal with the horrendous problems, has done it in an honest way, and I am proud of American policies.
Right now, about what the United States is going to do, as you said, this sense of horror is likely to turn to a sense of outrage, and I think the rest of the world, and particularly people that in the past have supported terrorists and given them harbor, a safe harbor, and helped them in some way, are probably quite worried at this point about what may be coming against them.
And more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silt and more dust. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
Everyone, please clear the corner.
Palpable fear as people run through the streets, choking on dust and debris.
Come on, let's go, let's go.
We saw the building come down, we all ran, and the walkway held up, say like 40 or 50 of us that were right there. We were buried there, and then cops shot out windows in the next building. The only thing that was in front of us was like these 1-inch windows.
The streets of the financial district covered with debris, in some cases ankle deep. Cars on fire, cars just turned by the force of the explosions. It was like something no one had ever seen. Panic, like smoke, heads uptown. Officials ordering precautionary evacuations of some of New York City's landmarks.
This is an orderly evacuation of 30 Rockefeller Plaza.
On the street, anxious commuters trying to call home, cell phone service dead. At Grand Central Station, travelers desperate to get out of the city.
It's gonna take a long time, but you're gonna see Mama and Papa today, okay?
Outside the station, a surreal scene. People buying postcards of the Twin Towers that no longer exist. As the day wears on, witnesses who survived the attack now face a new horror, searching for missing friends and co-workers.
We can't account for all of our employees. We're just in a state of shock.
The biggest, busiest city in the world, the attack revives fears of the 1993 bombing. Suddenly, nowhere in the financial district seems safe.
Did you ever think this could happen again? No, I really didn't. I lived through the first one.
After a tragedy so great, tonight a city comes together, searching for safety and comfort.
Tom, now this area is more than just a business district. It is also where people live. And within the last hour, we have seen families bringing suitcases, crates carrying their family pets to leave and to go elsewhere. They have no water, they have no gas, and there is also the fear that more buildings will collapse. The area is covered by police from all over New York City, and they tell us that they will be here through the night. Tom?
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Ann Thompson. But let me ask you, after you finally emerged from that building, what about other people who could not get into a building? What kind of casualties did you see?
Tom, I will tell you that when I walked out of the building on Broadway and headed down towards Canal, it was as if there had been a blizzard of debris and dust all over the street. I saw people running, I was walking, there were a lot of rescue people there, but there were people injured. I saw a woman being carried by two men. It was like something I had never seen anything like it, and all I could think of was just to get away from there, to get to safety. And as I kept walking to Canal Street, I could hear yet another explosion behind me. It was truly one of the most frightening moments I've ever lived through.
Thanks very much, NBC's Ann Thompson. Any number of NBC News personnel were caught in all of that today. Among them, our producer Mary Beth O'Toole and correspondent Rahema Ellis. And they provided us tonight with a kind of a video diary. I'd like to share that with you now.
So, I'm videotaping the television. Yeah. Because the NBC audience like disconnect the tape and stuff. And I just wanted to get something on documentation of all of them.
Well, we'll hope to get back to Rahema Ellis. Obviously, we're having some difficulty with what has been going on with the audio part of our broadcast tonight in that particular videotape. This is a live picture looking across New York Harbor, and I'll ask your forbearance and patience here because we are doing the very best we can under, as you might expect, some very trying circumstances. That's looking across from the other side, from the New Jersey side, at the lower end of Manhattan. That is a picture that has been going on all day, but when it began, there were the two 110-story towers of the World Trade Center. They are now gone from the Manhattan skyline. It's still a stunning thought to realize that they have been brought down so coldly and so efficiently in such a cold-blooded fashion by these hijacked airliners in this terrorist attack. Another colleague who captured some of the most horrifying moments today is Christian Martin. He's a native New Yorker and he's a producer at Dateline. He had his own camera with him when the buildings began to come down.
When I talked, all sick angles.
I saw a tourist with a video camera, so
I know.
said, let me buy that from you. Took a shot of a huge wheel of a plane right in the middle of the avenue. There was all these sort of white sheets in the middle of the street, which took me a minute to figure out what those were. I mean, the collapse happened 10 minutes after I got the camera. I shot a couple of shots of the building burning. I was shooting the building, and the building started to collapse, and that happens pretty slowly. Everyone gets into the job for adventure. This turned sour pretty fast. I was down in Oklahoma City, and I got there about 4 hours afterwards, and that was pretty chaotic. This was 1,000 times worse and more chaotic than that. And then, the cop was like, run, saved my life. I had literally a mouthful of soot. You couldn't see. And then people were just remarkable. Everyone was just in a horrible, horrible place. You couldn't see. Everyone was hurt. I was so lucky. So much luckier than so many other people. You just cannot overemphasize how many completely innocent beautiful people were just, destroyed by this.
One of our producers, Christian Brown, tonight, in his own words, he was there in the middle of it. Christian Martin is a producer for Dateline, managed to buy a camera from a tourist, and then almost lost his life as he was trying to record what was going on down there. We want to tell you that momentarily we do expect to hear from the Attorney General of the United States, John Ashcroft, who does have supervisory responsibility for the FBI. He's our chief law.
Right on.
Monument-type buildings were closed in Philadelphia. Los Angeles on high alert around Los Angeles International Airport, and so it went today. Now, a briefing is scheduled inside the White House. This is the first actual briefing inside the White House we've had today. This will be Tommy Thompson, former governor of Wisconsin, who's now the Director of Health and Human Services in the Bush administration, John Ashcroft, the one-time senator from Missouri, who is now Attorney General, and FEMA Director Joe Albaugh. We take you live to the White House briefing room.
Mineta and Director Albaugh will each be provided.
Homegrown, U.S.-sponsored attack?
I don't know the facts here, but I would think it quite unlikely.
It's possible. They will not be taking questions at this time. And with that, I will turn it over to General Ashcroft.
Speakings are going on right now. They're in the White House right now.
Thank you. Today, America has experienced one of the greatest tragedies ever witnessed on our soil. These heinous acts of violence are an assault on the security of our nation. They are an assault on the security and the freedom of every American citizen. We will not tolerate such acts. We will expend every effort and devote all the necessary resources to bring the people responsible for these acts, these crimes, to justice. Now is the time for us to come together as a nation to offer our support, our prayers for victims and for their families, for the rescue workers, for law enforcement officials, for every one of us that has been changed forever by this horrible tragedy. The following is a summary of the known facts surrounding today's incidents. American Airlines Flight 11 departed Boston for Los Angeles, hijacked by suspects armed with knives. This plane crashed into the World Trade Center. United Airlines Flight 175 departed Boston for Los Angeles, was hijacked and crashed into the World Trade Center. American Airlines Flight 77 departed Washington Dulles for Los Angeles, was hijacked and crashed into the Pentagon. United Airlines Flight 93 departed Newark for San Francisco, was hijacked and crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Crime scenes have been established by the federal authorities in New York, in Washington, D.C. area, in Pittsburgh, in Boston, and in Newark. The full resources of the Department of Justice, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the U.S. Attorney's offices, the U.S. Marshals Service, the Bureau of Prisons, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Office of Justice Programs are being deployed to investigate these crimes and to assist survivors and victim families. Thousands of FBI agents in all of the field offices across the country and in the international legat offices, assisted by personnel from other Department of Justice agencies, are cooperating in this investigation. The FBI has established a website where people can report any information about these crimes. That address is www.ifccfbi.gov. That address again, www.ifccfbi.gov. Individuals can report any information they know about these crimes to that website. It takes courage for individuals to come forward in situations like this, and I urge anyone with information that may be useful and helpful to authorities to use this opportunity. The Office of Victims of Crime has established a toll-free 800 number for family and friends of victims. They can call 800-331-0075 to leave contact information for a future time when more information is available, to find out information about a victim, or to find out information about the rights of victims and the services available to victim survivors and victim families. The determination of these terrorists will not deter the determination of the American people. We are survivors, and freedom is a survivor. A free American people will not be intimidated, nor will we be defeated. We will find the people responsible for these cowardly acts, and justice will be done.
Every single American lost something today. And every one of us at this time expresses our deepest sympathy to the victims of today's tragedies and their families. It is now our mission to begin the healing from this tragedy. From the moment that we learned of these attacks, the Department of Health and Human Services has begun readying teams and resources to be sent to New York City and the Washington area to meet any needs of state and local officials. So far, we have sent 4 disaster medical teams to New York City, and 3 of these disaster medical teams to the Washington, Northern Virginia, Baltimore area. These medical teams each consist of about 35 physicians, nurses, and emergency medical technicians. They are all trained to deal with traumatic injuries and other emergency needs. We've also sent 4 disaster mortuary operational response teams to New York and 3 to the greater Washington area. We're also in the process of shipping a great deal of emergency medical supplies to New York City with the help of the Centers for Disease Control. In short, we're making the full force of the Department of Health and Human Services, both its resources and medical expertise available to the areas that need our assistance. We've also this afternoon activated the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps, which consists of approximately 6,000 health professionals. We also are giving backup assistance to the 500-bed ship Comfort from the United States Navy. Americans all over are calling up and asking what they can do. The best thing they can do is respond to this great call by volunteering to give blood. We need Americans to continue to answer that call. No matter where you live, please do your civic duty and assist us by donating blood. It is our primary job is to make sure Americans harmed by this tragedy get the help that they need. We will remain in constant contact with the governors, the mayors, public health officials, and other local officials to make sure that all their needs are being met. It is a sad day, but America and all of its citizens certainly share tonight in the grief that has been caused. And as the President and everybody in his administration have said, we, the government, will continue to operate and continue to provide the services to all Americans.
One of the most cherished freedoms is the freedom of movement, the ability to move freely and safely. But today that freedom was attacked. But we will restore that freedom throughout the national transportation system as soon as possible. And we will restore the highest possible degree of service. These terrorist acts are designed to steal the confidence of Americans. We will restore that confidence. We have already taken some first steps as a precaution.
And so while this is going on at the White House, this is what's happening at the Capitol of the United States. Dennis Hassert, the Speaker of the House, has begun talking as congressmen and senators gather.
One thing that happens here in this place is when American suffers and when people perpetrate acts against this country, we as a Congress and as a government stand united, and we stand together. Senators and House members, Democrats and Republicans will stand shoulder to shoulder. Perpetrated on this nation. We will stand together to make sure that those who have brought forth this evil deed will pay the price. We're not sure who this is yet. But we have our suspicions. And when that is justified, and when those suspicions are justified, we will act. We will stand with the President, we will stand with this government, and we will stand as Americans together through this time. Thank you.
Now on the steps of the Capitol, Tom Dasher, the Senate Majority.
Today's despicable acts
Who wants to fly?
were an assault
Who wants to go anywhere? You know, like you
on our
said,
people
bring up the morale for that. They cut him off.
and on our freedom.
Say this and that.
As the representatives of the people, we are here to declare that our resolve has not been weakened by these horrific and cowardly acts. Congress will convene tomorrow. And we will speak with one voice to condemn these attacks, to comfort the victims and their families, to commit our full support to the effort to bring those responsible to justice. We, Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate, stand strongly united behind the President and will work together to ensure that the full resources of the government are brought to bear in these efforts. Our heartfelt thoughts and our fervent prayers are with the injured and the families of those who have been lost. We know as a nation, we've said our thoughts and prayers are with those families and those injured and those who are the casualties of today's attack. We also remember those thousands of people who are rescue workers. We ask now that we all bow our heads in a moment of silence and remembrance. Thank you.
Live from Washington on the steps of the Capitol of the United States, literally hundreds of members of Congress. We can't say that every member of Congress in the House and Senate was there, but hundreds were there in a show of solidarity and support, show of unity in the face of a sneak attack, the second in the lifetime of many of us, a sneak attack on the United States, this time by the shadowy personages who were part of the terrorism operation. There are a number of terror operations in the world. Osama bin Laden has been the focal point since 1998 of U.S. intelligence suspicions, but we've said it before, we repeat it without apology. No one knows who is responsible for these dastardly acts today. 3 of the World Trade Center buildings, the 2 Twin Towers and Building 7, destroyed at the World Trade Center. The Pentagon, dead, wounded, and destruction there. Now, coverage of the attack on America continues, including President Bush's address shortly, so stay right here with us.
And we're going to keep monitoring CBS News' continuing coverage of today's attack on America. Hello, I'm Ernie Anastas.
I'm Angela Ray. Shortly before 9 this morning, a passenger jet crashed into the World Trade Center.
And it touched off a chain reaction of events that would result in 4 downed planes. The collapse of both World Trade Center towers, along with Trade Center Building 7.
That attack didn't end there. One section of the Pentagon was also taken out.
CBS 2 has comprehensive team coverage of today's disastrous events.
Here's the latest information we have on today's massive and devastating terrorist attack. Explosions are lighting up the dark skies over Kabul, Afghanistan. The bombing began sometime around 2:30 in the morning and came in rapid succession in the vicinity of the airport. Now, large plumes of smoke and raging fires dot the horizon. That's right now. CNN is reporting that the rebel group Northern Alliance has claimed responsibility for the attack. It is believed that terrorist Osama bin Laden lives in that country. 8 hours after the first terrorist attacks on Lower Manhattan, fire was still raging at 7 World Trade Center, eventually causing that building's collapse around 5:20 this evening. The building was evacuated at the time. Mayor Giuliani announced this evening that all of Manhattan below 14th Street will remain closed tomorrow. Initial reports have 600 people undergoing treatment at area hospitals, with 150 in critical condition. Another 2,000 walking wounded, as they are being called, were taken to Liberty State Park in New Jersey for treatment. Mayor Giuliani says it may take 2 days before a final figure of the dead and the injured is known. President Bush is back at the White House this evening after beginning his day at a Sarasota, Florida elementary school. Earlier today, Bush and congressional leaders were taken to secure locations, and the government evacuated federal buildings across the Capitol. The government has also sent out search and rescue teams to New York and called in volunteer doctors and nurses. President Bush is expected to address the nation at or before 9 o'clock.
Okay, that is the latest that we have right now, and a lot happened today very quickly, from Lower Manhattan to the Pentagon to Pennsylvania. Let's try to put the day's tumultuous events in a chronological order. CBS 2's Hazel Sanchez brings us a timeline of what happened today. Hazel.
It was just before 9 o'clock this morning. The workday was getting underway in Lower Manhattan when what would become the nation's most horrific terrorist attack began. American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston, bound for LA, crashes into Tower Number 1 of the World Trade Center. 92 people were on board. Just 18 minutes later, before reality could set in, the unimaginable. A second plane, American Airlines Flight 77 from DC, bound for LA, crashes into Tower 2. 64 were on board. Minutes later, President Bush in Sarasota, Florida, calls the crash an apparent terrorist attack, pledging the full force of the U.S. government will track down those responsible. Federal buildings are evacuated around the country. Authorities are on alert coast to coast. About 40 minutes after the towers were struck, the nation learns that terrorism will spread beyond Manhattan. An aircraft crashes into the Pentagon. One side of the structure collapses in the fiery blaze. Quick to respond, the Federal Aviation Administration shuts down all air traffic nationwide. Shortly after 10, as the rescue efforts continue, Tower Number 2 collapses. Around the same time, United Airlines Flight 93 from Newark, bound for San Francisco, crashes near Pittsburgh. And United also confirms a second plane, Flight 175, crashing into an unknown location on its way from Boston to LA. 110 people on board those aircraft. Then at 10:28, the second tower collapses, and Manhattan's skyline changes forever, as do the lives of an entire nation.
And the Federal Emergency Management Agency has sent nearly 600 rescue specialists to the World Trade Center. They are trained in finding victims in disastrous events. We have guided missile cruisers on their way here, as well as 2 aircraft carriers to deal with any air or sea threats.
What many of us have witnessed today is terrorism as we've never seen before, and even some 10 hours after the fact. We struggle to grasp the reality of all of it. Angela.
I don't know if we can. Hazel, thank you. And the outside of the World Trade Center has been compared to a war zone. As we've been saying, Lower Manhattan is shut down with buildings south of Canal evacuated as a precaution. CBS 2 reporter David Diaz is live at the scene with the latest on a still very active scene there. David.
Well, holy shit! What is it? What just went down?
It was more than 8.5 hours after the initial shock of terror that yet another skyscraper, World Trade Center number 7, the site of the city's emergency operations center, which was weakened by hours of flame, finally collapsed. By then, dozens of other police and fire and ambulance departments had joined the battle. But the reinforcements could not save the Twin Towers that fell victim to suicidal hijacked planes. And even search crews with dogs had to await the third collapse before they could begin to search for survivors and for the bodies of the dead inside the crumpled towers. On the streets of Lower Manhattan, sirens repeatedly pierced the otherwise eerie silence. Crowds gathered in knots around cars with their radios blaring the devastating news.
There's been a lot of other things happening in Washington, a state of emergency basically there.
Among the listeners, people still shocked by the horror of what they had experienced.
There's an explosion. We're on the support floor, which is a basement. A guy came in running. All his skin was out of his body. Oh my God. All his skin was out of his body. We took him out. We ran out. We heard a lot of rumbling. I went back in. There was a lot of smoke. We went up by the stairs with Port Authority police to start rescuing people. A lot of people were coming out. But there was a lot of people that stayed there. We brought a lot of people on wheelchairs and a lot of people on gurneys, all people that couldn't make it.
Tonight here in Lower Manhattan, one thing that everyone, whether it be emergency personnel, the civilians who've been evacuated from their buildings, all are keenly aware of, and that is that in and around those buildings that collapsed, certainly World Trade Towers 1 and 2, there were people inside and outside. Not only there were workers going to the buildings, working in the buildings, but also hundreds of emergency personnel, New York City firefighters and police officers that were below those buildings when they collapsed and inside those buildings when they collapsed, trying to come to the rescue of the people who were inside. All of those possibly dead tonight. That's the fear that everyone is living with here tonight, where we're live in Lower Manhattan. I'm David Diaz, CBS 2.
David, thank you for your report tonight. And still more devastation followed at the World Trade Center hours after the Twin Towers collapsed. The adjoining building at 7 World Trade Center suffered heavy damage when the tower above it collapsed. Well, just before 5:30 this afternoon, it too crumbled, pancaking almost like a precision implosion. Ironically, the building had housed the city's emergency management office, which relocated before that collapse.
A makeshift meeting point for ambulances and other emergency vehicles has been set up in a parking lot at Shea Stadium. Jennifer McLogan is in Willits Point with the story.
From Shea Stadium, a staging area tonight for medics and...
Thanks to the alertness of some U.S. border officials, they caught one of the members of that terrorist conspiracy and exposed the whole conspiracy. That in the background of what happened today, and one additional reason there's so much nervousness around Los Angeles International Airport this day. Now, Jim Axelrod, CBS News correspondent who's been on this story since the very beginning this morning, has a rooftop view of what's happening tonight and some additional information. Jim?
Dan, less than 4 miles behind me is where the Twin Towers stood this morning, but not tonight. Ground zero, as it's being described in today's terror attacks that have sent aftershocks rippling across the country. The sign is at the Atlanta airport. National emergency. Airport closed. But it could have been anywhere in America today.
I'm scared. I'm scared. I want to go home. My safety is more important than my job.
The direct hits in New York and Washington snarled traffic as far away as Anchorage, Alaska, due to security upgrades at Elmendorf Air Force Base. They caused gas lines in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where prices started at $1.55 and then began climbing. They felt it in Florida. Disney World closed in Orlando, and the Florida Marlins baseball game was canceled. Same thing at Turner Field in Atlanta, and every other major league game in the country. First time that's happened since the death of Franklin Roosevelt in 1945. In Los Angeles, the Latin Music Grammy Awards that Carlos Santana was practicing for have been canceled for tonight. Madonna's show has also been called off, and television's glamour event, the Emmy Awards, also canceled for Sunday. In New Mexico, the state fair's been shut down, and in Little Rock...
The pilot says, it's 15 years in flying. I've never seen that, but we're actually going to have to land somewhere else.
Stranded travelers whose planes are grounded scrambled for rooms in an unintended destination. Across America tonight, malls are closed, blood banks are open, and this woman at a gym in Dallas seems to speak for so many.
Your own home is being attacked, basically. I mean, I feel personal, and I feel like it's personal. I really do.
For perspective, the Latin Music Grammy Awards we just told you about, one of the many events canceled somewhere in the United States, thousands of miles from here. That event had recently been moved to Los Angeles from Miami due to security concerns. Fair question tonight. How exactly does one now define a safer place in the United States? Dan?
Jim Axelrod from high atop one of the buildings in Midtown, New York, which gives us an opportunity to remind you that television is a bit like a flashlight beam. It can show you what's at the end of that beam, doesn't show you what's at the side of the beam, up or below. And the television cameras have been pointed today at the targets, the World Trade Center here in New York City, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., all those targets on the East Coast. So it's just in wide areas of Manhattan, and most of Manhattan, which is only a part of New York City as a whole, while there's a lot of tension today and a lot of concern for what was happening, obviously, to the country, and particularly on the lower part of Manhattan, that life did go on in most of the city. But all focal points have been and remain tonight on the dead and wounded out of what happened in lower Manhattan and in Washington in the case of the Pentagon. But officials up and down the West Coast found themselves scrambling all day, as well as officials here on the East Coast. Bill Whitaker has been keeping an eye on the West Coast developments. Bill?
Dan, even here 3,000 miles away, the terror struck deep. Airports, businesses, schools across the West closed down. People's reactions? A mixture of fear and anger. Fearing the nation's second largest city might also be a target, workers fled downtown high-rises, leaving the heart of Los Angeles a ghost town. With the Pentagon in flames, giant West Coast defense contractors, Boeing and Raytheon, sent Los Angeles workers home for safety's sake. FBI agents with fingers at the ready ring the main federal building. City government, law enforcement, indeed the entire city was on high alert.
We believe that whatever could have happened in New York could very likely happen here.
The busy borders with Mexico and Canada intensified security and remained open, but little else did. Urban icons, the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco, even Seattle's Space Needle closed down, leaving tourists stunned.
To Pearl Harbor magnified 10 times.
There's heightened alert on the Golden Gate and Bay Bridges, San Francisco's main links. Even Disneyland, the self-proclaimed happiest place on earth, joined other California amusement parks and closed down in fear.
Obviously, what they want is to shut down the country, and that's exactly what they've done.
I mean, it's scary to think that something like this could happen in the United States. I mean, you feel safe here, and now you don't feel as safe.
The West's water and energy suppliers are taking no chances either. At Hoover Dam, boats and bomb-sniffing dogs are on patrol. Armed guards stand outside the San Onofre nuclear plant near San Diego. Up the road, Marine Camp Pendleton is on Threat Condition D, the highest level of alert, meaning an attack is expected or imminent.
Right now, they are checking every car that's on base. We are restricting access if you're not a military affiliated.
This afternoon in Los Angeles, Muslim groups citing death threats said don't blame all for the alleged actions of a few.
The pain of this country is in fact our pain.
Saying there's clearly too much hatred, the Crystal Cathedral in Orange County invited people of all faiths to come together and pray for the victims of today's terror. So here, like the rest of the country, prayers for the victims and concerns for the country's future and safety. Dan?
Bill Whitaker reporting live from Los Angeles. The flow of casualties into New York hospitals has slowed tonight. the flow of casualties from the World Trade Center explosions earlier in the day. But the death toll is mounting at emergency rooms, and hospital officials say that they and we have yet to see a fraction of the dead and wounded. Let me repeat that for emphasis. The hospital officials say they've up to this moment, they haven't even seen, they've seen only a fraction of the dead and wounded, which gives you some idea of what we need to be prepared to face in the days to come. Dr. James Dillard, a pain specialist who usually works in the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital System, but was sent to St. Vincent's Hospital near the World Trade Center to help, said, and I quote him, "I have been in here since this morning. It is like a normal busy day, but it is eerie. We expected to get overwhelmed. It is surreal inside, but there are no sick patients. I think so many people are dead. It's a bad sign that there are no mass casualties, meaning wounded." The doctor saying he sees a lot of dead people, more dead than wounded. Fires continue to rage at the scene of the attacks at the 110-story Twin Towers. The fires have ebbed and flowed during the day, but they're still burning. Much of this prevents police and rescue personnel from getting to the wounded or dead. This is according to witnesses on the scene and our own CBS News correspondents. There are believed people trapped in the rubble, the debris from the collapse of the 3 buildings at the World Trade Center, the 2 Twin Towers, and then World Trade Center building number 7. But police, firemen, and other rescue workers have been unable to get to most of those people who are known to be trapped in the rubble. How many of them, we don't know. Some 50,000 people work in and around the World Trade Center. Many other thousands visit it during the day. All of that contributes to this eerie mood in New York City, and particularly in Lower Manhattan this evening. With us is Fuad Ajami, the distinguished professor at Johns Hopkins University, an expert on the Middle East, and for that matter, an expert on terrorism. Well, as hard as it is to say it, Fuad Ajami, they Let's go to John Roberts instead. Quick check off the line of scrimmage here. John Roberts, now back at the White House, allowed on the White House grounds.
1 p.m., Bush vowed to do whatever is necessary to keep Americans safe, blaming a faceless coward for this morning's
need to do to assuage their children's concerns?
Well, there are a number of steps that can be taken, actually. One is that you want to avoid...
Those numbers expected to increase dramatically by what is obviously a very catastrophic situation.
Hey, you can see here that even though it did take place here in New York and in Washington, there are ripples being felt out throughout the entire country. No flights are leaving any airports at all for the first time in the history of modern aviation. Back here in the city tomorrow, there are some important cancellations you should be aware of. New York City public and parochial schools are closed tomorrow. The borough of Manhattan Community College on Chambers Street, that'll be closed. But all of the CUNY schools will be open. The Empire State Building will be closed tomorrow. Businesses below 14th Street in Manhattan will be closed. That, of course, includes Wall Street. U.S. stock exchanges will be closed through Wednesday. Postal service is canceled until Thursday. There will be no New Jersey bus service in or out of the city until further notice. And Fashion Week, which was taking place in Bryant Park in Manhattan, will be canceled for the rest of the week.
As far as transit is concerned, it was a mess all day. Port Authority says they've reopened the westbound Lincoln Tunnel, and path service resumed westbound in New Jersey from 33rd Street in Manhattan to...
Jeff, late reminiscent of us, and how much do you...
Lanes of the Staten Island bridges are reopened, as well as the upper level of the George Washington Bridge, and I believe that we have more information around here about the trains here in the city. Just, I think primarily the trains that are not close to the World Trade Center area are the ones that are running. The outer borough trains are apparently running normally, and with very few exceptions, the trains should be running as expected, though Obviously, around the World Trade Center, you shouldn't expect to get around pretty quickly, but as you heard Gary say, one of the cancellations or things that you should expect tomorrow is that 14th Street or south of 14th Street in Manhattan will be closed. We also have some phone numbers for you associated with this American Airlines number for those who think that they might have had a loved one or a friend on flight 11 or 77. They can call 1-800-245.
Age level. Talk for a moment about signs that you should look for if your child is really having a tough time.
Yes.
What do you look for?
Well, kids will get clingy. They'll, not want to separate from you, for example. Kids will have nightmares. Kids will have other kinds of symptoms like not wanting to eat, not wanting to separate from you, not wanting to go to sleep, crying.
Not wanting to go to school, maybe.
Now, they may not want to go to school.
Sure.
There's something else you'll hear from them. Someone around here just told me before I came on the air that
We hate to interrupt. The president is speaking now.
Yes, right now. President George Bush, right now, live from Washington. Let's pick up on his comments tonight. Much awaited information. I certainly hope we'll hear that right now.
Yes, he is, I'm sure, about to start talking. He's probably just getting the last bit of briefing there. There's the president.
I think he is ready to speak right now. President Bush.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world. And we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
President Bush speaking live from the Oval Office in the White House. Perhaps ominously, among the things the president said was, and this is not a direct quote, but it's on the money, we will not differentiate between those who committed these acts today and those who harbored them. The president vowed that no act of terror will darken America's beacon of freedom. We go now to CBS News Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts. John?
Dan, important words for the president to say that we will not differentiate between the terrorists who committed this act and those who harbor them. If this was, in fact, Osama bin Laden's group who was behind this, that message is aimed directly at the Taliban government. Though we should point out, Dan, that every indication we get from the White House tonight is that the explosions that we saw in Kabul tonight were not part of any American action. The White House has absolutely disavowed any connection to those, as has the Defense Department. The president also sending out some important words of reassurance tonight to Americans, saying that the government is still in operation, essential personnel will be back at work later on tonight, and that the government will be open for business tomorrow. And even though the stock market will be closed tomorrow, Dan, the president reassuring Americans, saying that the American economy will be open for business. The big message here tonight that the president was trying to send out was the idea that they can hit us, but they can't knock us down. He said that we have stared enemies in the face before, we have stared them down, and we will do this again. So the president, Dan, tonight, using every ounce of resolve that he can muster to say the United States will recover from this enormous tragedy. Dan?
John Roberts at the White House. Now, U.S. officials are starting to piece together the case of what happened today, and in some instances they're piecing together what they see as links to Osama bin Laden for being responsible for the worst terrorist attack in U.S. history. That Orrin Hatch, the top Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee tonight.
New York's bravest never had a chance.
We really never even got that close to the building. An explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
Less than an hour later, the South Tower came crumbling down. It collapsed. The top floors collapsed down. I saw it blow and then ran like hell. Thank God. I'm 69, but I can still run. But it was far from over. Tower 2 collapsed into Tower 1. 10 minutes after that, we were ordered out. When the dust settled, signs of life started to emerge.
Chaos. It's just chaos out here. It really is. So the Twin Towers fall. It's amazing. It's crazy. I can't believe this shouldn't happen. I really can't. Nightmares. Armageddon right here.
This was the worst act of terrorism on U.S. soil, but not the first attack on the World Trade Center. 8 years ago, terrorists set off bombs in the basement in an effort to take down the two towers.
Intelligence operatives at high levels in this country and abroad, that Osama bin Laden, despite the fact that he is a multimillionaire, that even bin Laden requires additional financial support from somewhere to carry out this kind of operation. Now, some of the speculation is supported by very few facts, if any. However, this thing being carried out with great precision is consistent with the hard facts. Somebody planned this thing exceptionally well. Correspondent Bob Orr, who covers aviation for CBS News, has pieced a lot of this together. Bob?
Well, Dan, it clearly was a highly coordinated attack.
It's not there. As you can see above me, the fire in this adjacent building just continues to rage. It's a surreal environment. It's almost impossible to describe. Again, except to make a war correlation. Whoever said somebody declared war on us, it certainly looks like it, doesn't it? That building I was referring to that was on fire, I didn't know at the time what it was. I learned later, and also learned just how lucky myself and my photographer Terrence were. That was 7 World Trade Center. 30 minutes after I got out of there, it collapsed. 30-some stories. I have one other note that I just want to put by. This is probably the darkest day in the history of New York City, if not the history of the United States. But if you're looking for some inspiration, just 10 minutes ago, I wasn't too far from where the tower number 1 and tower number 2 went down, and I saw a car completely covered with soot. And on that car, somebody wrote, "This won't stop New York." So if you're looking for inspiration, hang your hat on that. Ernie, Angela, back to you.
That is the spirit, indeed,
Yes,
that we've been
yes.
hearing about. Vince, before you go away, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. You were talking to one of New York's bravest, and they were talking about not being able to go into the buildings to be able to do their work until those fires have been under control. What's the status right now? Are they able to go in there?
No, not at this point. Still smoldering. And it's not just the fires you have to be concerned about. You have to be concerned about the structural integrity of the buildings. You know, I mean, you see the silver building over my shoulder here. 7 World Trade stood next to that. The windows there were completely blown out. We don't know what it's done to the foundation. Again, I mentioned it several hours earlier. You want to rush in and do everything you possibly can to try to bring people out. But at the same token, you don't want to send 2,000 to 3,000 rescuers in there to have them killed by 1 or 2 more buildings that collapse suddenly.
From the people you've been talking with tonight, what does the next 24 hours, the next 48 hours look like?
Well, the next 24 hours definitely looks like doing their best, consulting with engineers, getting any hot spots out, trying to assess the structural damage to any surrounding buildings. Once that is done, it's deemed safe to go in. They're going to go in with heavy equipment. They're going to go in there with search dogs, cadaver dogs, and they're going to go in there with hands and feet and shovels and picks, and they're going to do everything they can to bring as many people out alive as they possibly can.
Vince, one more question. You may not have any information on this, but the issue was raised earlier in the day since we've been on the air here for so many hours. What have you heard, if anything, about biological entities? There had been that issue raised earlier that perhaps anthrax and the like might have been part of this attack today. What have you heard?
Well, certainly there's a lot of concern of that around here. I haven't heard anything concrete where there is definite I won't even say speculation, definite feeling, if you will, that they believe that some sort of biological terrorism has been used. There's all kinds of speculation as to what has happened here. Was the plane loaded with explosives? Was the plane enough in and of itself to crash in the building to bring those 2 towers down? Because you'll see the video, and you've seen it 100 times. It looked like it was a controlled implosion. It didn't fall over. It looked as if somebody put TNT all throughout that building. It pancaked from floor to floor to floor.
Yes.
So, of course, there's speculation here that maybe these planes were loaded with C4 explosives or some type of explosives on timers. That if the plane itself didn't bring it down, that charges would go off and that eventually what happened would happen. But as far as biological attacks go, yes, it is a concern. How great of a concern, I don't think at this point.
We'll be learning more about that, I'm sure. A lot of questions, perhaps not the answers that we want right now, but in time, an issue. Instrumentary in the Lower Manhattan. Thank you for your report. We will get back to you.
Yes, and of course the hospital personnel at St. Vincent's, they were some of the first people on the scene to actually help with the injured people there. The mayor has been he's just been so happy with the way they've handled themselves and the way they got to the scene so quickly and the work they're doing. Whitney Casey is there live with more for us. Whitney.
That's right, the mayor, the governor, and the police commissioner all here today commendating the efforts of the workers here. Now we're told that it's almost sort of the calm before the second storm. It's very quiet here behind me. It's been like that for the past 2 hours here because they say that they're doing some extensive digging and they hope to bring people back here very shortly, and they say those people may have very serious injuries. Now joining me right now is Mark Ackerman. He's been here with me all day talking to us, keeping us informed about what's going on at the
to help. I think that anybody who sees any of these extraordinarily brave individuals experiencing any signs of depression or excessive anxiety or irritability or even anger, needs to urge them that it's okay to talk about it, to go to their professionals that their particular unions or divisions will offer for them, and to not stand on their need to hold everything in. This is a time to explore what you're feeling, to talk about it, to be able to get it out, and to share it as part of the healing process. These gentlemen, the police officers, the firemen, extraordinarily brave. The EMS workers, they've been through more than the rest of us can possibly imagine in this circumstance, and they
have been out for most of the day. People
Yes.
haven't been able to use their cell phones or landlines, but nevertheless, we are communicating and getting the information that you need. Speaking of information, Dana Tyler is standing by right now with more on the schedule for tomorrow, what's going to be.
Going to the special now.
Back now at CBS News World Headquarters in New York, our
country. I mean, the jam of phone lines was incredibly widespread, and so that has lessened up some, but still you did say, so many people using the phones, pay phones, we've learned, all pay phones are free in Manhattan until this emergency is over. Communication, of course, not only in talking with your loved ones, but just continuing on with life, getting things done. As we've all said throughout the day, all buildings south of Canal evacuated earlier today. Stability of the buildings still crucial. Crews wanting to know that, so obviously those people do not go to work tomorrow. All New York City public schools are closed tomorrow. Principals will be in and some supervisors talking about what curriculum they will do, because this is something our children need to talk about to learn to cope with. This is not go away when we wake up tomorrow. This is something we will all be dealing with for quite some time. Also, all Catholic schools in New York City are closed tomorrow. All Manhattan bridges are open, but outbound only. No bridge crossings in Manhattan currently. The Battery, the Lincoln and Holland tunnels, all completely closed for now. That has been the situation all day. Subway service has been restored. Trains are bypassing stations south of Canal Street. We understand that Long Island Railroad train service has returned to normal. New Jersey trains have limited service out of Manhattan. And again, payphones free for the time being. Ernie, Angela, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dana. We'll get back to you in a while.
Joining us now on the phone is Democratic Congressman Elliot Engel. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I am.
Good to have you with us this evening. We also...
Now, or chose to fall.
I've seen at least 12 people either jump or they had no choice. I don't know if it was by force. They didn't want to get burned or they didn't want to blow up, but they just jumped. And just look at them flying out the buildings like they're paper.
For New Yorkers who witnessed the catastrophe, there was no doubt for an instant that it was terrorism.
It was too nice a day for that to be an accident. We're just talking amongst ourselves.
You knew the plane hadn't gotten lost.
Not a day like today, first thing. It was a beautiful day. How does a plane hit a building on a beautiful day like that?
Firefighters working at the center of the attack describe a scene of overwhelming devastation. Pieces of bodies in the streets and in the rubble. Rescuers climb the girders
as long as we live.
The symbolism of this attack was impossible to ignore overseas.
The feeling is that throughout the world,
I just want to, it's almost the hour, and I'm going to get,
I want to get that sample going to achieve a symbolic victory.
But officials here in New York and in Washington know the difference between a symbolic victory and a real victory. When the World Trade Center was brought to the ground, the country was brought to its knees. But terrorism experts say just for a while. For years, authorities have practiced for attacks like today's. Action of Jerome Howard, who was an emergency management official in New York.
You have to plan for the worst. That's just, particularly in a city like in New York and Washington, D.C., the real thing is never like a drill. The enormity of the situation today is just, is just incredible.
Did the bad guys win today? They got that image.
Well, they certainly struck a blow today. There's no question about it. But we are a very resilient nation, and we are very resilient people.
And we're a very different people than we were just before 9 o'clock this morning when this all began.
Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, New York.
And now to Washington and CBS News Chief White House correspondent John Roberts. John?
Well, Dan, we have some late-breaking information. After his address from the Oval Office, the president went immediately into a briefing with his national security team. Condoleezza Rice, I believe that Colin Powell may have been there upon his return from South America.
You have the people.
Empire Blue Cross, Marsh McLennan Insurance Company, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, Guy Carpenter, Oppenheimer Funds.
Now, to give you some kind of an idea of just how seriously they were taking security, moving the president around, some video that came into us late today, taken from inside Air Force One by cameraman George Christian, who was on the plane with the president. You can see outside the wing of the aircraft, Air Force One being shadowed by two fighters. There's an F-16 off of one wing and I believe an F-15 off of the other wing. So Dan, this was on the way back from Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska as the president was coming back to Andrews. They were definitely taking this seriously, but apparently the president comfortable enough that he's back in the White House tonight. Dan?
John Roberts live at the White House. And so from out of the skies, tragedy has rained down on our nation. It was swift, deliberate, terrifying. In a matter of moments, in one city, a towering American icon was destroyed. And in another, the greatest symbol of our national might was set ablaze. What once seemed unthinkable has happened. On a bright summer morning, under a clear and cloudless sky, terror struck. The toll has been devastating. It may be days or even weeks before the final accounting is done in terms of dead and wounded. To grasp the enormity of it is almost too much for the heart to bear. This night, we can only look back in sorrow at a world that has suddenly, perhaps irrevocably, been changed. And tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, and in days and years to come, we will look at the calendar and remember September 11th, 2001. It is a date that will be etched in history, engraved in stone, and in our memories. The day of the attack on America. We leave you tonight with these images, flashpoints from a day that cannot be forgotten. For the latest on this still unfolding story, stay tuned to the CBS station. There'll be complete coverage on the early show and on the CBS Evening News. And we will have continuing CBS News coverage on some of these stations. On some other stations, we will not see until sometime tomorrow morning. I'm Dan Rather in New York.
That was good. Even his speech was good.
That was great.
Oh God, just to see the
Cartoon
fire
version.
balls, just bellowing out of that, and then, Todd, I've got to tell you something. The worst thing I've ever seen in my life, I saw people jumping out of the window. They were jumping out, or maybe they were already dead or forced out. Just my God, is this happening? When you see it happening, and you're there, and and then this, I'll tell you, I got sick to see when the one that was hit second went down first. When that went down, it was like such a, oh my God, just to see it go down. And then the other one, oh God, I don't know, gosh, this is, it really is a day in infamy. I mean, there's no question. And then the smoke got.
Is it still smoking out there?
Yes, it's still smoking. My God.
She shines right to the left of that building.
You could see the difference.
That's the umbrella
They
building.
both went down. You could see the difference in the smoke. The one that was hit first, there was more fire. There was more fire in the